Today's Discovery Monday, and we have a new tool to test out, which you may have heard of in the past, and it's called Womp. It is an other 3D tool. Once again, this is an alpha version of a software, so I do not know if I can even get in, but from video in the background, it seems more like a modeling tool rather than a 3D design tool. It seems pretty intuitive from the landing page, and we'll see if that's the case, but that is the official subject of the day. There are some rendering texture that seem to be AI generated. Basically, the render engine is on by default, and so it takes a lot of time for a computer to compute all that. So let's see if I can get in. I can get it. Cool. So same exercise as before. When you arrive, the first thing that they tell you is, by the way, this is not really free, even though on the website we say this is a free landing, like a free 3D thing. So a red flag so far, but that's fine. And so what they say is you can have it free until February 19th. So they have to give me 2 weeks of testing. What does that give us if we pay? We have pro materials, 7 new properties, and 20 plus pre-made materials. Interesting, potentially. Unlimited 4K downloads. If you render something and then you want to see it in 4K, you can do that. 150 expertly crafted super materials, which I don't really... They have pro materials and super materials. You create in 3D with 2 new forms, intersect and stain. I don't know what that is just yet. We'll see. A new, faster and incredibly clear lightweight scene preview. I hope that also goes with the free version. And then boost your super unions to 6th level of depth. That opens up endless options. I have no fucking clue what that means. Cool. What happens if I do monthly? Nothing changes other than the price. Good. Let's close that and extend the viewport. So when you arrive for the first time after you've read the pricing table, they give you access to this environment, which is first of all in light mode, reminds you that this is a fucking alpha version, so that's good. And then you have pre-made scenes with pre-made compositions and objects in them, so that's good. I'm guessing these are events or things to do, so that's interesting-ish, debatable, so you can do that. And then on the side you have discovery, discover, which is what we are on, your projects, your events on the 3D tool, events, whatever. Accounts, what's new, which is interesting. Learn, which is what we would need to have around here, but that's fine. People, I'm guessing if you have multiple people in your team, that goes there. Cool. Then you can search. You have the social at the bottom. You have the help at the bottom, like any website. And then there is my internet health, which seems to be bad, which is obviously I'm streaming. Help again, think for my downloads and my notifications if that exists. Let's start a new project. You can now put union inside of union, so you can nest things together. Cool. That makes sense. And you can get the thing that they were talking about earlier, which is if you go pro, you get 3 more levels to go as deep as 7 level of unions. Good. No use for that. So exercise interface. We have carded-ish design from what I've been pushing for the past 6 years. So the central element, which is the viewport of the Canva, is seemingly a card that is floating-ish, anchored at the bottom of the screen right there, but floating in the middle, and then the tools are on the floor right here, right there. I'm expecting the left side to be my layer list and the right side to be the inspector. Same thing as all of the design tools. On the top you have your objects, materials, backgrounds, lighting, and function. Interesting. You have health. On the 3D tool. Now have a lot of control on how your screen look and is managed. Every area has resolution that you can change, but you have to be responsible. The higher your area resolution, the higher your quality, but you also risk affecting performance. Obviously, sorry, that makes no sense to me. I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of someone who has no idea of 3D tools. That made no sense. As someone that used Blender in the past, I know what it means. I know why I don't understand why they have the rendering engine running at all times compared to Blender, right? If you're in Eevee render, you're good, it loads super fast, and if you go in Cycle, it takes ages, and it looks like this is Cycle render, so realistic-ish. And I feel like if you just rendered in another render engine, you could have your rear resolution being like lower, whatever. So health is basically resolution and options, but then because I have nothing selected right now, I have my environment settings on the right side, so that's cool. It's good to know that's where things are supposed to go or be. I have something about the background here, but I also something about the background here, so we'll have to check that again. And then I can upload an image. I have my viewport that is on a cube that gives us the ability to then do exactly that, so we can just quickly rotate our elements. The scroll wheel click and drag is for zoom, as well as the scroll wheel. Left click is rotation and right click is drag. Spacebar and click is still rotation, and it's alt option, same shit. Alright, so they all do the same stuff, and it's easier to grasp than a regular 3D tool. Cool. When you select something, your layers are taking a fat ass tick next to them, and you can use that as a checkbox to select multiple things at once. Interesting. I'm trying to go real slow because the rendering is just bad. When you have nothing selected, you go back to the environment. When you select something, it goes back to object as a default, but you can go back to environment and change shit right there. So that's what they called an area. So basically the thing from that we've seen earlier has a different meaning. So I thought from semantics of the English language, as always, that area was basically talking about an area of something, and so you could define an area, which was probably going to be on the floor in my head. But basically the area 1 right here is what I would call a collection of multiple things, and the rendering is applied to that collection. So I could technically have one of these that is my area 2, and then my area 2 would be rendered extremely low, but then my area 1 could be max render, which is weird if I think about it, right? Like the fact that you can have the same element twice and one of them being rendered crazy detailed and the other one not. It's interesting, but it's also, it doesn't seem necessary, at least to me. But the thing that I can see right here is the fact that the area 2, even though being at max resolution, the difference in between these two is not that much. So I think if you wanted like a bit more, something like middle ground is good for render, and then just the 0.1 from the beginning is enough. Basically what they said is Womp a rendering farm somewhere, and the thing that I'm seeing right now is the screen of another computer streamed through my browser. So it's not browser-based 3D like Spline is. It is rendered somewhere, and I'm just streaming from their computers. So that way I'm guessing on their ends they have many computers. If they have like massively powerful computers on their ends, they could have a new instance of the same app running on their ends for any new user with a threshold of 10-20 users per computer that streams just the app, and that's enough. But it's impressive. As I said, I feel like the rendering would be better if I could have the hand on selecting the render engine. Let's add an object from here. I think it's the same. If I'm clicking the plus right there, it's doing the same thing as doing this. And then if I'm clicking the light, I'm thinking it's gonna do the same thing as this. All right, so let's say we want the Womp thingy to be rendered right there. It seems as well that any elements have the most metal behaviors. So if you don't know what a metaball is, it is basically blobs of elements that interact with each other. Each particle inside of a metaball is attracted to another particle. So a sphere is the most metaball option. But then if you have two spheres next to each other, you get these blobs that are trying to merge together. So any elements, at least from what I can see, seems to be that way. Right now, this is crazy though. So each of the points of the helix that they have is a ball, technically. It's really fast. without really having to think about it. This is impressive though. From my understanding, we have many balls on the sidebar that our layers, and each of these have a different color that is then impacting the transition between all elements because of the rendering engine. If I wanted something more green, I would have to change the texture or material of each of these points to make sure that all of them works together. That might be complicated the long term, but the fact that you can create glass in 3 clicks without really thinking about it, that's pretty neat. I feel like we've covered most of the tool so far. We have the object at the top that are containing a ton of things, including the community objects that you can probably reuse to get started quickly. You then have your materials, which is what we have played with quickly, the one that we are using here. All of these ones are pro material, and all of the yellow one are probably going to be the super materials. The color of the background, I feel like it's the same as this thing. If I'm changing that here at the top, I don't know if it's really necessary to have a duplicate of that setting in terms of X, knowing that the background color will always be visible here as soon as I select an element, the material is taking over. That's interesting. Then you can add lighting, which is not a directional light. You either environment light or you have spherical elements. So the luminance is technically the brightness, and then you have the position right there, which is the same thing as moving shit manually. The render is made slower. That's interesting. All right. And then the last thing that we haven't checked is the function, which I believe is only gonna happen when we have multiple selected, like here, and it's probably what happened with these things. They have been unionized or merged together. So if we had the helix, can't do that, cool. We had this one, we mirror it, does a mirror in the center. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know how I can define the function. It seems that the function mirror thing that we just did was applied at the center of the previously selected elements, and so the function has been applied, but then I cannot modify it, select it, remove it. This is a bit bad. Like, my only options to remove it would be to Control Z as much as I can until I get to the original thing. But right, my mirror is set to the center. And the last thing that I wanted to check is, do we have animation? We don't have animation, so it's just a modeling tool, which is really, we have the overall feel of that thing, but it's a pretty simple tool when comparing with Blender or Spline or other 3D tools that we've seen. This one is really limited in its free version right now, and we are lacking some sort of interaction based option like animation and or hover, clicks, all of that to be implemented into website. However, knowing that the current trend of landing pages for agencies or for SaaS product to integrate 3D elements in your backgrounds and then just play with that, obviously I'm going to compare it to Spline. The huge benefits that we have with this one is the interactivity of things, right? My hover state to raise the top level, that's a very cool animation that you can have. And then you have the looping mechanism in the bottom elements that could be like loaded inside of a landing page with no issue. So Spline is better in terms of integration, and for me Spline is more related to Blender in the browser because you have the ability to do whatever Blender can do. Here, from what they say themselves on their landing page, it is more or less no download gray app with 1,000 buttons. So it's the NT Blender streamed version of a modeling app, and that's it. I think if you're an artistic person or someone who creates visual things, as in posters, banners, visual add-ons to a website, yes, that could be cool to play with. However, it's not great. If I were to export an image, let's take the area thing and see if I can select the object right there, and then I'm exporting it without backgrounds. That shouldn't take that much time. But then what do I get as a result? I'm getting this Rupert's drop from that far away, even though I just said that I wanted the object itself, but it's that small inside of the wide ass environment. I don't know. I don't really know. And then if I'm exporting that as a mesh and it's just an object, it should be extremely fast, to be honest. You know, I'm just gonna zoom in with the camera to make sure that I see the things, but that also feels weird. If I'm selecting like the ball or that thing, technically if I'm selecting just the ball itself, the softener of the ball, and I say that I want that exported, the preview that I'm getting is I'm gonna export the selection. I'm not gonna export that with the ball in the center. No, I'm gonna export the fucking ball. Whereas here, when I selected the elements and I said, yes, just export the elements, it gave me the elements zoomed out as far as it was. So technically, if I was there and I said export the selected object, I'm getting this. What the fuck? I want the object. I don't want something else. Make sense? And even here, once again, the canvas size or the thing that I'm looking at, if I have this right there and I say that I want to export the selected object, here it's giving me things that I don't see. All of that section, which is behind the tool, I'm not seeing that. It feels if I had another ball right there that is underneath the but still visible, it may come through even when just selecting something. I think you can or could that, if I make it flat like that, can, but still it is weird.